Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. It's a very exciting episode because we are discussing the 9th studio album by Primus, the Desaturating Seven. This is just freshly released in September of 2017. And I must say, it is a fantastic album. I've only listened to it about 3 times, so you're going to get a very immediate reaction from me in this video. My immediate reaction is that this is a particularly good album. As the passage of time winds its course, I may be able to find criticisms or potential flaws or whatever. But I need to let the album sink in a little bit more. But in terms of immediate reaction, I can see very little wrong with this album. I think this is excellent. I think this is certainly the best Primus album since Green Naugahyde, and it might well be, better than Green Naugahyde. It depends on your taste. It's very, very different. Of course, we've got Tim Alexander on the drums, which means that we get that sort of Tim Alexander Primus. It's that atmospheric, psychedelic kind of a vibe. And, that's just how Claypool and Lalonde play when they're with Mr. Alexander. But that atmospheric, psychedelic thing is on full form on this album, which is really good. That's why you can't really compare it to Green Naugahyde. Green Naugahyde is a much more direct, funky, rocky kind of an album, whereas this is, the vibe I get is sort of Seas of Cheese meets the songs that were on Animals Should Not Try to Act Like People, which is a really, really cool blend, and it is fantastic. Larry Lalonde shines in particular on this album, I think. Again, I think what some people said about Green Naugahyde is that, both Larry and Les held back a fair bit, and, that was okay with me because we got to hear lots of Jay Lane's crazy drumming. And on the Chocolate Factory, Lalonde has got a lot of key parts, but I mean, they're still, they're working under the context of the songs of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, right? So that's kind of a different thing. But on this album, Larry really, there's so many key moments that pop up that are just classic Lalonde. That jangly, disjointed, dissonant, strange, plucky style. He's got a very distinctive style. And this has got some of his best playing in a very long time, I think, on a Primus record. So it obviously is worth noting. It is in many ways it's kind of Primus's first proper concept album. I guess again you could say that Primus and the Chocolate Factory is a concept album. There's certainly a story winding through that set of songs, but it's also like a soundtrack album, a twisted soundtrack album. This, however, is really the first album of completely original material, for one thing, that we've gotten since Green Naugahyde, and first original material with Tim Alexander since Animals Should Not Try to Act Like People. And as I said, it is a proper concept album. All the music has been written by the band, and all the lyrics were written by Mr. Claypool. And the concept behind the album is, of course, this strange children's book that Les Claypool was fixated by, called The Rainbow Goblins, and it tells their little story of how they eat rainbows and they bring darkness to all the land, except for a place called the Valley of the Rainbows. And it's goblin rock, as Claypool has been describing it, and I can definitely get that vibe. In addition to having that very identifiable, Primus sound, which again is absent on the Chocolate Factory album, I think. Chocolate Factory is more chamber rock. But in addition to having that classic Primus sound, it really does do. The music does a great job at conjuring up, goblin imagery and valleys, and it is quite fascinating. And what a perfect concept for Primus to take on. Goblin rock seems like such a natural Primus thing. So I think everything comes together really, really nicely on this album. Alexander, of course, is doing some fantastic drumming. He's playing a more traditional kit than the Chocolate Factory. which is cool. And again, it gives it that more identifiable Primus sound. And Claypool is back to predominantly playing the regular bass, and he is just on fire as he usually is. So let us go forth and dissect the tracks. I must say too, it's a fantastic album cover. I like the whole Last Supper montage with these rainbow goblins, and it's also the triumphant return of the classic Primus font as well. That was nice. I was delighted to see that. But yeah, we'll take a look at the tracks, and we'll see if we can decode this story about goblins that eat rainbows. I like the back there. A record of treachery and virtue. Quite privacy. So yes, the album opens with The Valley. Really cool way to start the album off. It starts out with some sort of melancholy acoustic guitar, almost sounds like film music, and winds into a bit of a rhythm, and we get the announcement by Justin Chancellor, I believe, was what the note said. Justin Chancellor of Tool does the little announcement, and I think it's reading a section of the actual children's book that it's based off of, and we get the whole premise of these goblins that eat rainbows. I quite like the moment when he brings up the Valley of the Rainbow. Found that quite funny, quite entertaining. And it winds its way into the actual song, which again, it kind of it feels a little bit like that chamber rock thing that they were doing before. Right at the before the actual song comes in, we get a nice big run of stand-up bass, which is always welcome, of course. But when the song itself properly starts, it's sort of a demented acoustic sort of a waltz, and very cool. It's waltzy, but it's also very grand and demented. Waltzy, demented, and grand and anthemic almost. Yeah, love Claypool's vocals. His vocals just seem to get better and better and better. They've got that cartoony aspect, but there's also a weird sort of grandiose to it, a grandeur, if you like, which is fantastic and very fitting. So yeah, again, the really great opening track as far as I'm concerned. There's a great little bit of Larry soloing, if I remember correctly, that I quite liked. Again, I've only heard this track 3 times now, so this is still a new track for me. We'll move on to track 2, which is The Seven. Now this one I'm a little more familiar with. This is the first one that they released a couple of weeks ago, and there's a few live clips of them doing it, and it's a fantastic song. It introduces us to the seven goblins, and it's really cool. I like the sort of juxtaposition that you get there, and that marching section, dum bum 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 da 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 da. It's so Primacy, but you can also imagine a row of 7 goblins marching in unison. It's like Snow White and the 7 dwarves, but not dwarves, goblins. But it's all very strange and demented and weird and awesome. But I really like that marchy section, and then it goes into really cool kind of cyclical riff. Really reminds me of Rush. I'm in the middle of recording Rush videos at the moment. They probably won't be released for a little while, but that's why I thought of Rush when I was doing but yeah, it is a really good song. I love the back and forth between those 2 parts. And yeah, what can I say? It's a great lead-off track. Good. It was definitely a good one to release right off the bat. And some great playing on it. Again, the classic Primus sound is much more identifiable on the 7 than anything on the Chocolate Factory album, I think. But yeah, anyway, we wind our way to track 3, The Trek. Now, this is a proper epic. I think this is certainly a contender for my favorite song on the album, I must say. Really cool. It's almost got, it opens with some acoustic guitar, actually, which is a great transition from the 7, and it gives it that concept album feel, that almost filmic way of moving the songs from one to another. But when the song proper starts, it's very almost kind of melancholic and very, very quiet, and you know, it's almost like a very slowed down Southbound Pachyderm kind of a vibe. And there's a couple of moments there where we get some really classic Larry Lalonde atmosphere that just pops up a couple of times during the slow melancholic bit. But the big part that I really like is, you know, it goes from the slow melancholy bit, and then that is such a groovy, classic Primus thing, and again, it's one of those key Larry Lalonde moments when, you know, it's all about his guitar and the way that it kind of jangles and, you know, bounces off of what Claypool's doing. You know, it is all that great signature Primus stuff, and it's so groovy. It's I just love that section. And it goes back and forth between those, and then it's got a big wind up towards the end. So you know, it is you know, a good proper Primus epic. Yeah, I really like the track. That's probably my favorite on the album. It's certainly a contender. Then we move on to track 4, The Scheme. I really like this. This is one of the songs, the other song that I listened to a few weeks ago. It was released on YouTube, and again, this is I get a major Seas of Cheese vibe with this track. But it's not like Seas of Cheese, you know. It's still, you know, I get that vibe from it, but it's still, you know, it still feels like modern Primus. Great bass line. I love the run. And then again, another one of those Larry Lalonde moments there with such, you know, that is he's just shining. He's in all his glory when he's riffing away at that part, which is great to hear. It's also, you know, it is very a distinctive stylistic thing with the Tim Alexander lineup of Primus. You know, having, you know, throughout the whole song in The Scheme, you get and that's, you know, that's kind of like, you know, the basis for the whole song, and everything is kind of built up from there. And it's got a quiet bit where it goes pretty much down to just those you know, those quick bass drum runs, and yeah, it's a fantastic number. And well arranged too, you know, that bass run, it pops up a couple of times and it winds into that chorus, which is great, a very epic chorus, I might add. So good, yeah, I'm humming away because it's awesome. Moving on to track 5, The Dream. Now this is the big psychedelic moment. This is you know, this is that Tim Alexander thing. And it's not so much specifically to do with his drumming. I think it's just, you know, the style that those 3 particular members, you know, do so well. And so when they get together, you know, that's just you know, how they end up playing. But it starts out with a really weird kind of looped guitar thing. I think that must be Lalonde on the guitar doing the loop, and all kinds of weird atmosphere. And it's basically, you know, a weird sort of psychedelic thing with a big bass solo on top of it. But Claypool sings along with the bass solo at a few moments, which is really cool. Parts of this remind me of the Chocolate Factory, actually, and that actually kind of like made me clue in and think, oh yeah, well, I mean, that, you know, The Dream is so Primus, then it reminds me of the Chocolate Factory. Then the Chocolate Factory must be Primus. You know, I keep bringing that up. It's the follow-up album to that, but I keep bringing it up. But oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Whatever. I'm talking about the tracks on Desaturating Seven, so whatever. We'll move on. Or we're talking about The Dream, which is a really cool track. Like I said, I like how Claypool sings along with the bass run there, and you know, it eventually winds its way into a bit of a song structure. Eventually, it goes into a bit of a jam. Kind of has that little part that you know, it almost feels like there's a song trying to come out of all the weird, you know, atmospheric jamminess and improviness, but never quite makes it until the very end when it goes into a, you know, proper Primus jam. Anyway, moving on to track 6, we get The Storm. Now, this is the other epic on the album, and another contender for one of my favorite song on the album for me. Again, you know, it's kind of got that Southbound Pachyderm vibe at the beginning with just the atmospheric pluck style that he does. But it builds into a really cool track, and again, there's some really epic moments there. There's some really cool riffery that comes in, and it's multi-section piece. You know, towards the end, it kind of hops all over the place. So you know, it is a proper epic. I think as the album sinks in, I predict myself gravitating towards the Storm more than the Trek, but I still really like the Trek, like I said. And yeah, that is the kind of big grand finale of the album, really, is yeah, everything that's in that song, The Storm, and then it finishes up with track 7, The Ends, with a question mark. And this is just a reprise of The Valley, really, but it's really good in that it wraps the whole thing up, and you know, it gives it that proper concept album kind of a vibe, and you know, it concludes the album quite nicely. It finishes off with the acoustic guitar as well. That starts the album. So yeah, I mean, what can I say? I think this is a really good album. It's great, the length of it too. Actually, this is got to be the shortest, you know, Primus, you know, proper Primus album that's been released. It's not an EP or something. It's less than 40 minutes long, which is almost unheard of. But I like that because it, you know, the whole thing is a nicely put together package. It's not any longer than it needs to be, and it's not you know, any shorter. It's just exactly, you know, it's a perfect in and out, satisfying listen. So yeah, like I said, I only listened to it 3 times. My chatting was very rambly there at times, so I apologize for that. I don't edit these videos. I guess that's my trademark. I just blah 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 blah. But hopefully that's okay. Anyway, this has been me talking about the Desaturating Seven, the brand new album by Primus. If you're a fan, I urge you to check it out. And if you are a progressive rock fan, this might be you know, a great intro to Primus. If you're not familiar with, you know, their work otherwise, and you like proggy stuff, then you know, this might be a good one to start, because there's a couple of great epics on there, and you know, it ticks all the boxes that should be ticked for a Primus album. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Happy listening if you are going out and buying that album, or if you have bought it and are enjoying it right now. This concludes the Primus videos. This is the end of the Primus videos until they do something else, which could be any time. I might do a couple of Claypool solo things in the future. Not immediately. I'm going to work on some other videos. But I might do Colonel Claypool's Bucket of Burning Brains, because that's a really cool album that they did. And it's a chance to talk about Buckethead. So that might be in the future, but until then, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, all the rest of it. And until the future, you'll see me then.